Good evening to you all. My name is Priscilla Ntai, and I will be your MC for the night. I'm also the Vice Chairperson of YIPA. We are very excited and very happy to have this event. We'd like to thank GPF for partnering with us, and we hope that you do enjoy the evening. So welcome. So first we'll have an address from the CEO of the GPF. So I'd like to call on Lindiwe Kwele. Thank you so much.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Lindiwe Kwele, CEO of the Gauteng Partnership Fund. I would like to acknowledge our board of trustees who are present with us this evening, as well as our executive from the Gauteng Partnership Fund, academic staff and students of our host University of Wits, and as well as our keynote speaker, Dr. Sisange Bulana. Our panelists this evening, Dr. Sitsabo Dlamini, Professor Samuel Azasu, and Mr. Dendi Matamela, Mr. Tsepo Likhau, and Ms. Elaine Pasha. And ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the GPF 20th Anniversary Guest Lecture on Youth Empowerment in collaboration with the Youth in Property Association. Depending on where you get your news, you might have read that South Africa is either one of the top 10 countries in the world to relocate to, or is on the verge of its own Arab Spring. We are a country of great contradictions. We are beset by many ills and shortcomings, but we are also a country of great potential. Potential means capable of being or becoming, and it is a term that encapsulates the youthful population of this country. And I think we need to celebrate this demographic dividend. This event, which forms part of our 20th anniversary celebration, planned alongside our strategic partners and key stakeholders, bring together young people who are talented, qualified, and curious enough to devise solutions to the shortcomings I mentioned earlier on. This, ladies and gentlemen, it requires effort, dedication, and being intentional. So as a GPF, we are so excited to be part of this event. As a GPF, we will continue to exist 20 years later because of the strong trust placed on us by the Gauteng Department of Human Settlement as its implementing agency, as well as the various alliances we have forged with strategic partners, such as the YIPA, Youth in Property Association. We exist to facilitate the development of integrated and sustainable human settlement for communities in Gauteng. The billions of rands we have managed to leverage from private and public sector partnerships have really allowed us to direct funds toward affordable and social housing, which are key to dismantling the remnant of the apartheid era spatial planning. So this evening we have our colleague, Shiraz, who's our Shiraz Logat, who's our investment officer, who will talk more on what we offer as the GPF and the opportunities available through the GPF. And I encourage you to take advantage of that particular opportunity. In Dr. Sitsabo and Professor Samuel Azasu, we have two accomplished academics and industry experts who will shed light on construction sector best practices initiatives. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say I'm excited to hear our keynote address by Dr. Sisange Bulana, a man who is not only an admitted attorney of the High Court of South Africa, but an inspiring multi-award winning property developer too. I'm also sure that even after all these years, still believes in the same mission to enhance the lives of people in our communities. And we honor your presence this evening, sir. In Mr. Dendi Matamela, Mr. Tsepo Likhau, and Ms. Elaine Pasha, we have a perfect exemplaries of what clients in good standing should be. It's only about compliance with repaying loans, although that is crucial to the GPF operating model, but about the upliftment of young people. And I think this needs to be celebrated. You know, Mr. Tsepo Likhau just last week was bestowed with the Presidential award in the Black Industrialist event last week because of the hard work that they've done. And I really think we need to celebrate our own. If you can give them a round of applause, please. These are our trajectory for a well-established and a trajectory for a successful Gauteng City region. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Not everybody can be famous, but everybody can be great because greatness is determined by service." I would like us to view today through that lens, ladies and gentlemen, inspiring young leaders to follow the example of Dr. Ngebulana and other speakers in finding solution in the emancipation of our people. Once more, a big thank you for joining us this evening. I know you could have been anywhere else, but you chose to be with us, and we do not take that for granted. To our partner, Dulipo Yellow and the YIPA team, we are so grateful for your ongoing support. That would not have been possible without you. Thank you so much and welcome, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much, Linda, for that inspiring speech. The next part will be having the opening address, which will be Amanda Clark, who is the executive of corporate services at GPF. Thank you. Oh, sorry. My apologies. I didn't start with some housekeeping rules. Please can you ensure that your phones are on silent, no funny sounds while people are presenting. Thank you so much.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you, and thank you for delighting us with the gift of your time this evening. As Mrs. Kwele has already said, we've honored your presence, so I'm going to take a shot and say all protocol observed. Article 9 of the African Youth Charter states that every young person shall have the right to own and inherit property. State parties shall ensure that young men and women enjoy equal rights in terms of property ownership, and that state parties should also ensure that youth are not arbitrarily deprived of their property, including inherited property. Article 14 of the same charter, meanwhile, advocates for the right of youth to a standard of living adequate for their holistic development. Yet the South African youth's access to economic and employment opportunities continues to be severely strained and constrained, as we know. Stats South Africa recently found that the unemployment rate was at 63.9% for those aged between 15 and 24, and at 42.1% for those aged between 25 and 34 years of age. Quite a marked comparison compared to the official rate of unemployment nationally that stands at 34.5%. Whilst in the face of these startling statistics, we may not come up with national policy shifting solutions here tonight, we will contribute to youth development and empowerment dialogues that are so very necessary. Ladies and gentlemen, the GPF takes its mandate extremely seriously, but with a rapidly growing housing backlog in our Gauteng province, we need to ensure that we increase our capacity so that we can deliver so much more, as we are an implementing agency meant to accelerate human settlements delivery on behalf of the provincial government. To achieve this, We want to empower and promote the participation of the historically disadvantaged individuals and companies in the property sector, particularly through our Entrepreneur Empowerment Property Fund, which targets first-time property developers. Mrs. Kwele spoke before me about potential very eloquently. Potential and opportunity go together, and we often speak about one of the biggest barriers in developing nations being the lack of access to information. So I'm really thrilled that here tonight, we're speaking to a room of very inquisitive, bright young people in a building where one of our speakers, Mr. Dandy Matamela, now a successful property developer and manager, spent many days absorbing essential information on his way to completing his bachelor degree in architectural studies. The objective of this event is to do just that, inspire many, many of you who may harbor intentions of following in his footsteps, Mr. Tsepo Legao's footsteps, and his partner Elaine Pasha's footsteps, in forging careers across the built environment. I'm sorry to say that today does not contribute any credits towards you achieving your degrees, but I hope it strengthens your resolve to complete them. I hope that we can help in our little way to shape your futures in architecture, construction, and spatial planning sectors and industries, and that you will be inspired to contribute to the sustainable growth of your communities, which I must underline is the most important part of education, is going back and making those sustainable changes for development where we all come from. I look forward to an illuminating discussion tonight, and I thank you very much for your participation here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, for that inspiring speech. I would now like to call upon our newly elected YIPA patron, Dr. Sisang Ngibulana, who is the founder of Robosis as well as the executive of Billion Group. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I hope you do inspire the rest of us with your story, because I have heard it before and it is amazing. So thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My talk tonight will be around my story. I thought it's easier to just tell you my story. I was born in a village, perhaps like some of you guys, without running water, with no lights, without a flushing toilet. And what you'll hear from now is really just step-by-step progress in life of not entertaining doubt about your life. Doubt is the biggest impediment to human progress. And I hope in the end you would be inspired. So I've decided to theme it throughout my life points that I want to share with you tonight. One is living intentionally. Nothing must happen by chance in your life. Set your goals clear. Dedicate your life to discipline and hard work. There's no gain with ease and comfort in life. When I grew up with very average marks until matric. I didn't think much about my life as as something that great will happen out of it. A light bulb came in my life when I did my first year of university many years ago. When my grandmother, who had saved enough for us grandchildren going to university, there was about 5 of us, and she said she had just saved enough money for us to do our first year at university. And if you don't make it, if you don't have the right grades and you don't qualify for bursary or for a loan, that's the end. You might end up as a driver in life. And that got me thinking. And if I look back in my life, that's really where the light bulb switched on in my head. Because from there, those words kept ringing in my head. And they informed the discipline and the hard work that I put into my life thereafter. I did my degree, and the following year had student loans from Standard Bank. I did a law degree. I had student loans from Standard Bank. I naturally wanted to further my career. Standard Bank wanted me to go work so that they can write off the loan or forgive the loan. But if you don't work for them, then you have to pay back the loan. But I was intent on furthering my career, so I went for a post-degree out at Natal in Maritzburg. And every time I called home, they would tell me they received a letter of demand from Standard Bank. They want to be paid for their loans, which obviously didn't sit well. I suppose this is the first time in my life I realized that adversity is necessary for us to grow in life. And invariably, adversity is an opportunity in disguise. So was the adversity in my life back then. And while I was doing my post-degree LLB, I decided to register, well, to write a board exam for estate agency in Maritzburg. And I registered, I passed it, and I registered for selling homes with Reality L1 back then. I had a 2-year post-degree. And without going long on this, in that year, I sold 16 homes. I was the best agent. I became the best agent that year for Reality L1. And mind you, I was part-time, I was studying. I paid off all my student loans. And I bought my first car, cash. I suppose that's where my ambition started, because I bought my first car, and when I bought my first car, I said it has to be an aspirational car, and it was a BMW 316. Well, brand new, it was 21,000 rand, so it wasn't, it become very expensive now, but it wasn't without difficulty, because I was selling homes. This is before the new South Africa. I was selling homes in a suburban area where Black folks were not allowed to live. And I would sometimes in some of the show houses sit there, and some of the folks would come in, get off their car. When they get in, they realize there's a black guy inside. They turn back, start their car and leave. So it had its fair share. And needless to say, I had to have a white girlfriend who would stand there. And when they walk in, she would say, they would ask, who's this black guy here? And she would continue to say, he's our builder, just in case you need anything fixed in the house. And really from there, I was able to show them different colors of towels, because I would walk behind them and see what turns them off, etc. They didn't like the bathroom. I'd present them with options and negotiate between the seller and the buyer who's going to cover the costs. And I got disappointed by the builders that I used to hire to fix whatever had to be fixed. And I ended up doing it myself. And in fact, I made the money from that and not from the estate agency. I made some money from the estate agency, but more from the building, which introduced me to the property space, effectively. I then duly left and I did my articles in Cape Town with a top law firm. So while I did my post-degree and I was busy with all of the, selling homes, renovating homes, making them good for the buyers, I managed to be top 5 of 103 students doing LLB back then. Back those days, they used to put all our names up. Number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right through, so you knew exactly where you stood. But it's because I didn't play with my time. You know the saying that says, if you want something to be done, give it to the busy person, because they know how to allocate their time. So adversity disguised opportunity. Life's not a straight path, always. Always excel in any given task that you do. Life has a way of showing us that whatever you've gone through will come through very handy at some point in your life. I spent my time doing my articles with a law firm in Cape Town. Because I was part of the top 10 students, they would fly us out. There was a program where they would fly you to the toppest law firm. I came to Joburg, Durban, Cape Town. They offered me a great opportunity as a top law firm, and I did my articles with them. And I was lucky enough to do articles. The principal that I was under was already a CA, and all the guys I was articling with were already CAs that just finished their accounting articles. So I took up the challenge to do a conversion course. UCT had just introduced a conversion course to accounting. So while I was doing my articles, I did that, which was quite a challenge for me. I'd never done accounting in my life. Needless to say, that helped me in years in future. I then got to a point when I finished my articles. I practiced for about a year, and I realized that I had a different vision to being a partner in the law firm. I looked at the lives of partners and, the appreciating the hard work and the discipline that they have, and the slaving that, they went through. You walk in there on a Sunday, they're there. On a Saturday, they're there. You leave midnight every single day of the week. They're there. You come back at 4 o'clock in the morning or 5 o'clock. They're there, and you wonder when do these people sleep? And you look at their lives and you realize, with all the sacrifice, their lives are very average. And I said to myself, is this where I picture myself in my later years of my life? Sorry. I then left for one of our clients, who was Eskom at the time, the good Eskom days. And I must say it was an incredible experience. I had offers from the banks and everywhere else. I left for Eskom as legal counsel to Eskom. And again, excelling in everything that you do in your chosen path. I learned quite a lot of things in my career in Eskom. And my accounting came very handy because I then specialized in finance. I looked after treasury, and I did a lot of structured finance transactions. I moved from a junior legal advisor in a space of 18 months to not only senior legal advisor and chief legal advisor, became a corporate consultant, and within 2 years, I was the legal manager. 5 years on, I left for their treasury. They'd been my clients. I'd been very close to them. Moved from a senior position to a junior trader, traded money markets, capital markets. I headed their structured finance. I left deputizing the treasurer in Eskom to start my own business. And the reason why I was actually compelled to leave, which was a blessing in disguise, because I put an investment in some coal mines, a company that was listed, and I assisted with my structuring skills from being listed. I did a Section 311 for them, restructured the business and took it private from the listing, and I became the chairman, and I got funding from the banks and the IDC at the time. Needless to say, it didn't go well. It was a big failure. And before that happened, I had moved to be full-time because we had seen the cracks, and the bank said, unless I'm really involved full-time, they cannot assist. And in the end, they didn't assist, and I had to pick up the crumbs. And again, the reason why is because when I was in Eskom, just before that, I tried a trucking venture. And the trucking venture didn't go well. It left me with a lot of debt with Stanbic back then, about 1.3 million. And while I was employed, I had to do something. So I knew that I had some good property skills, and I started buying land parcels in high-end areas. Back then, Kalame Estate was still new. You could buy plots for 18,000 Rand. Danefen was still new as well. You could buy plots for about 20,000. So I leveraged that up, bought plots and developed them into homes. It used to take roughly about 4 months home, double-story home, about 400 square meters. You'd spend about 250,000 and you'd sell for about anything between 400 and 450,000. So there were decent margins. Made money from my first one, lost money on the second one. And I made some good money out of just, speed of construction and delivery, quality delivery. One thing I learned is you need to take risks and you must be prepared to fail. Failure is part of living. It's part of growth. You'll not grow without failure. And when you take risks and you are prepared to fail, you are able to get up a lot better. So I then continued, and I had some clusters in Hyde Park, and I used all that investment to invest into the coal mining. Needless to say, because of the coal mining that didn't, that went under, I ended up without a job because I'd left my job, and I ended up with no projects, and I was at the crossroads, and I said, do I go back and beg for my job? Or I'm in a new trajectory. I have a dream, I have goals to achieve. Do I fall back or do I fall forward? And I decided to fall forward. I committed to my future. And I remember that year, I couldn't even pay for school fees for my kids. It was hard. It was a year of tears. And I look back, and I don't know how some months I survived. But I decided to fall forward. And with all being said, you'll find rejections, you'll find disappointments, but always try and get up and find new ways in order to achieve a different outcome. I never really believed that people can buy things off plan because I like seeing things before. But I took a chance, and I took options on a plot in Hyde Park, 4,000 square meter plot, and applied for subdivision. And I did artist impressions of 4 cluster homes. And within 3 months, I actually pre-sold 3 of those. And I was able to go back to my bank. Back then, there was no credit committees. We had a bank manager. I hustled the bank manager. And I was able to get some capital, and I was able to start construction, and my life began again. So that's how things kicked off. And again, my vision grew from there. And I always wanted to get into the commercial space. And back then, the insurance companies and banks were leaving the CBDs. But I didn't have the capital. I couldn't compete with the guys who were actually taking advantage of those opportunities until I came across a building that had been condemned by the Department of Labor. So nobody wanted to compete with it. Nobody had an interest in it, Pretoria, called Liberty Building. I looked at it. I went up and down sleepless nights, and I made an offer to Liberty. The tenants in the building had vacated about 8 floors. It was 26 floors. Sorry. And then I made an offer, and they wouldn't accept anything less than 90 million, subject to due diligence. I then put a QS and everybody else to do the inspections, and engineers. They put together a report. Meantime, I was trying to convince tenants to move in the building. I put nice impressions of what I'll do in the building. And I realized, again, that people want to see and visualize. So while I had an option with Liberty, in fact, I had a sale agreement subject to funding and so on. I decided to, one of the big problems is that the basement, there are 3 basement floors, the bottom basement had been flooded and the water had become acidic. So I started pumping the water out. I did waterproofing above the whole basement. Mind you, I wasn't even an owner of the building. I started, and I asked them, they said, it's obviously at my risk. Started painting floor by floor. I did about 4 floors. And when some of the tenants saw that, they started moving in. I said, I don't want any lease. I just want you to come and occupy and pay me rent. They started moving in. And again, I then applied for finance, and my funding was rejected 5 times. Every time I tried to find a different angle. And I remember the 6th time I said to the consultant who was applying for finance, this is just the last time. And he was fed up with me and thought I'm embarrassing him because it's been back and forth and he's going to lose his career here if he. But I had faith. And the 6th time he came back and he said, you know what, these guys will never do this deal. I don't want to hear about this deal again. All they've said is come with 50% of the money. And of course, that was quite a long haul. And I said to him, you know what, actually, this is very positive because they haven't rejected it this time. They've said yes, but subject to. That's a very big mind shift. And I said, leave it to me. I'll see how I can come up with this 50%. 2 months later, I had hustled Liberty with big QS reports that this building needed about 120 million rand to fix. And they agreed to cut the price to 39 million rand. Nice. Not without hardship, because I used to sit at the CEO's office and he wouldn't want to see me until 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I ended up knowing everybody on the floor. I would do my work there until, they really listened to me and conceded because there was no other option for them. This was a building which had been condemned. I completed doing all the work in that building, despite the QS numbers that looked very scary at 120 million. I completed the building with about 20 million of work, and it was filled with tenants. I had 3 LECs among the tenants and had the building revalued. It was 140 million. That started creation of a balance sheet of which I could leverage and dream bigger. So from there, my vision grew. I thought I could go into the retail space. I love shopping centers. And I thought I could start my own shopping center. And I started a shopping center, did market research, etc. Back then, and acquired the land in a township, which is, actually a piece of land in Tanzania where crime used to happen, etc. with long grass. And acquired it, and it was very convenient for a nice shopping center on the main road. Had funding from APSA back then. We costed everything else, 260 million. And leveraged my balance sheet and commenced construction. When you commence construction, I had all my challenges. You must remember that the bigger your vision, the greater the challenges you're going to have. And during construction, I remember during earthworks, platform works, we had quite a lot of incidents. The one time, even though it was all fenced up, a grader was pushing about 10 heaps of soil, only to find that there were kids riding on the soil, and one of them got buried inside. And we stopped for 3 months. We couldn't continue. We had prayers. I called people to churches to pray on site, and then we continued. And just before we started construction, we had quite a fall on the land. There was an area that had to get blasted with rocks. They had about 120 blasts. The last blast, number 120, you have to fill up the dust before you blast. You stop cars on the road, etc., in line with all the protocols. And you fill up with soil, keep it up, compact it, and then the blast happens underneath. One of the rocks flew in the air, out, into a hospital, which is 800 meters out, into the roof, into a patient, a mental patient, on the head. She was killed. Very, very bizarre. And then you start questioning yourself. And you wonder why these challenges, why, people have lots of construction everywhere. Why these bizarre circumstances? Again, we stopped the work for another 3 months. My conscience just wouldn't allow me to carry on, because I started questioning myself. Maybe I'm just doing the wrong thing. Maybe this is a sign that God is giving me that I shouldn't be in this space. We had prayers. Because it was the last blast, we then had the contractor, and contractor started. It was a contractor. We had built another mall in a nearby town. Trusted him that he would do the job well. We had 14 months to do construction. And then I realized that he was taking his time. If you look at the programming of the works, he had about 60 shutters, and we had about 800 columns that to be done. And it was very clear. We had a program for 4 months for these columns. It was very clear he's not going to do all these columns with these shutters within the 4 months. And after all the arguments, I decided to tell him to quit. So I fired him, and it became a burden to do this myself. Hired some of his managers. I did all of that, and we completed it a month earlier. And while we were busy with that, my vision grew. I identified an opportunity for a big regional shopping mall for the city of East London. Tanzania is about 30 km out of the city. And of course, I was getting now to the big league where all the big players participate. And when I identified the opportunity, I realized that the best location for it was at a location where a local casino was. The land of the casino was owned by the casino itself, adjacent to the casino. And when I made the bid to the casino, suddenly there were other big players who were bidding with me. They had done similar deal with that particular casino owner and another casino in Witbank with them. And I suspected that they brought them on board to come compete because they thought, you know, they've got a track record with them, and I was somebody from nowhere. And we then beat each other on the land. But what became crucial for the casino was there was only one road that led to the casino. And the construction vehicles during construction would use the same road. And for them, there's no amount of compensation that would compensate them if they lost their clients because of the inconvenience on the roads. So they needed somebody to demonstrate how they're going to manage the construction process, clean up the roads and make sure there's no mess on the roads that will inconvenience their patrons. I suppose that's the angle which I picked up, and I realized I could have an advantage because the other guys obviously would be complacent because they know they've done business with these guys before. And I won on that basis effectively. But by the time that I won the right to develop and the plot, there were 3 other developments for the same thing. But everybody agreed that there's only one opportunity for the city. There can only be one big regional mall. And then I then ran to the retailers, and I realized the retailers were all committed to the different sites. And I realized that, number one, it was good that they were not all committed to one site. 2, I thought, if I go to the same executives who have signed contracts with these guys, it'll be a futile exercise. I'd rather go directly to the CEOs of the retailers. I didn't know anybody at CEO level of these retailers. And I remember calling one of the directors of one of the companies, I won't mention names, and he was very rude, and he said, "Where did you get my number?" And I thought, okay, it's not going to work. I must just go and squat at the CEO's offices. And I'll mention a name this time. I went to Truett's, and I squatted the first day. They wouldn't see me. I went there the following day. On the 3rd day, I've been sitting there, and his PA came and he said, "Michael, we'll see you for 5 minutes." It was 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I said, "That's fantastic." And then I walk into his office, tell him my story, tell him my opportunity. They were committed to another scheme together with so we call these schemes. Right? It's a funny thing. Some people think it's a funny word, but they were committed to another big mall together with Foschini Group. And I gave him, and I said, "Look, I couldn't go to executives. I'm contacting the CEOs directly. But this is the opportunity, and this is the location, and retail is about location, ease of egress and access, visibility, and all sorts of things." And I think I convinced him. And needless to say, 5 minutes became 3 hours in his office. He was so excited. And he said, "Cesar, if everything you said is true, I'd commit, but I also need you to commit to me something." I said, "You tell me." And he said, "If you commit to your scheme and everything stacks up, I'd like you to join my board as a board member." You know, so I became a non-exec there for about 7 years, became friends. But one of the good things is that he then introduced me to Woolworths thereafter, CEO, Simon at the time, and Simon introduced me to the Foschini CEO, and so on and so on. So within 6 weeks, all the other retailers withdrew from all the other scheme. They came to my scheme. And obviously that didn't sit well because these are all big players in the market. There's a new player who comes from nowhere, popping out of the blue. And one of the retailers, funny enough, came to me and said to me, "I've been told that if I commit to your scheme, I'll be thrown out of existing shopping centers in this country." So that's how vicious these things are. And obviously the big nationals can't be threatened like that. But I had the tenants, and then I called the contractor. We'd been negotiating with who was with us when we were simulating how construction phase will happen to the casino group. and only to find that they were not available anymore. They said, no, we can't help you. Now in this country, this is a project which was 1.3 billion rand at the time. And there were only 4 big construction companies that could do that. From Greenacre to Wilson Bailey to Group 5 and to Wilson Bailey Homes. So if those 4 can't do it, you can only joint venture the smaller ones. Basil Reeds together with Stefanutis and those. And I went to the others, quite disappointed with the guys, and everybody else rejected me. And then I realized much later that the big players had gone to these guys and said, if we build for this guy, we're never going to give you work. So I realized how rough the big boys club is. So I had the choice. Do I withdraw from this because it's a big league, or do I carry on? Now, my choices were very limited because I had all these leases from retailers. They have timelines. Retail is very vicious. If you don't hand over the store for their beneficial occupation, because they have to build their store, so you have to hand them the shell, within a certain time, there's penalties. And those penalties, we calculated those penalties that if we delayed the scheme by 30 days, the equivalent penalties we'll pay is the same cost as the entire structure, 1.3 billion. So you can imagine. And these penalties, obviously, for them, you must remember, when they build a store, they have to train people, they have to employ people, maybe 6 to 4 months before the store opens. They have to train those people. They have to order the stock some 6 months early. So all of that becomes waste if that store is not ready. So that's really what happens behind the scenes. So I then thought, if I can't deliver the scheme, it means I'll never develop another shopping center because I'll never be trusted by these retailers. So that actually became a blessing because I realized no contractor wanted to build me in this country for me. This is a massive building. It stretches over a kilometer. I don't know, some of you have been to East London. The building is an entire kilometer. And it stretches over 5 floors. So 2 floors of parking underneath, 2 retail floors, and parking on the top. So it's a mammoth building. And then after a long thought, I realized the only way to do this is to actually just form my own contractor that can do it. And obviously, because it's such a massive task, I would need to get the best team in the country. So I then targeted the biggest team of the contractor that led me down in the first place, who had done the simulations, etc. Also now knowing that we're doing this on the back of my competitors, saying to them they'll never give them work if they built for me. And I was on a very tight timeline. So the construction phase that was left was about 26 months, and the construction had to take place within 25 months. That's a program that we had. Then I started convincing the MD of the Gauteng division to convince his guys and didn't want to hear a word from me. And then I then started lobbying his family, his wife, his children. And then eventually he was quite upset, came to me, wanted a meeting and asked me why am I, and 2 of his friends. And but that's really, in the end, I ended up winning him through people close to him. And his concern was, I've been in this company for 31 years. You can't think I'll go and start a new company with you and, you know, I've got shares in this company. And the people you want in this company, the least experience was the financial director who had 18 years experience in the company. Needless to say that on the month 25, I had 17 of them resigning to join my new company. So yeah, now I'm taking your time, but you know, these challenges are necessary to build us up in life. They had 17 guys, and the bigger blessing was they were told on the day they resigned to leave immediately. So they couldn't even serve their notices, which was actually, on the other hand, good for me. By the time they got to the door, they couldn't even open the door. These are people who had 31 years of service, 25 years of service. So that's how they were treated. And yet they didn't even know where they were going. And then 4 days later, I remember I didn't even have space for them in my office. They used to squat in my boardroom, but they started putting programs and making sure that, procurement, work streams and all sorts of things, contacting suppliers. 4 days later, the MD of the company was quite upset. He called me, picked up his call, and called me all sorts of names and saying, we've got bigger pockets, bigger wallet than you. We want to show you. Nobody's going to work for you in this country. Nobody's going to give you any supply. And I thought it's a joke. I thought, I understand that you're frustrated, and I understand, but you must also remember what you did to me. It's like putting my house on fire and my kids are inside. I had no choice. And then he will apologize, but then have a go at me again. I just listened. But needless to say, he actually acted upon that. We realized that nobody wanted to give us any suppliers. All the suppliers, nobody wanted to give us anything. Down to concrete, down to cement. Because these guys are big. They're the ones who sustain the livelihood of these suppliers. So we couldn't get even shutters, we couldn't get cranes, we couldn't get anything, even steel. So there was no way we could build. We have all the team, but now we have a stalemate. So I said to the guys, don't worry, I'm going to make a plan. I carried on. I found a local quarry that was owned by a family in East London. We bought 50% of it to secure stone. We got our cranes from Dubai. We got our shutter equipment from Austria. We bought a batching plant to mix our concrete from Germany. We imported cement from Germany. Wow. And we batched our own. So we're busy with logistics. You can imagine we're all dealing with things we've never dealt with in terms of import, export, and registering companies to get the importation, etc., getting shipped in containers. So that delayed us for another month. But as everything came on side, we started batching our own. We had a quarry, and it was exclusive to us now because our demand was good enough for whatever they produced. Needless to say, we completed the construction within 23 months, a month less. And we opened successfully. However, in the middle of that, just about 6 months before we opened, I'm sure you guys know, 2008, Lehman Brothers went under in the US, and the new global recession kicked in. Banks were not lending money, so all our small tenants couldn't open their shops, from jewelry shops to fashion boutiques to restaurants to fast foods to all these smaller shops. So suddenly we had a 30% vacancy in the mall, which accounted for 45% of the income. Also, we had bigger issues because we imported everything else. The 1.3 billion became 1.6 billion in completing construction. Banks were no longer lending, so I had a crisis of having to fund the difference. So the sleepless nights start. And you have the big overruns that are unfunded, that you have to find money. So you start selling assets, you sell everything you have at a big discount, from land to everything else. And then you have a monthly issue. My bond was 15 million rand a month. The mall could only produce 7.5 million rand, 7.8 or so. And I had to top up. Banks don't listen to your stories. So every month it was a juggle. I had to get rid of everything. And I realized at some point, this is not sustainable. Because you're busy selling things at a discount. If it's not a car, it's everything, but whatever you can sell. So that was quite a big challenge back then. And I learned resilience and focus in adversity. I would have days where I would wake up and I wouldn't be able to see. and I'd have to close my eyes, open again. I'd get to my office and I would blank in front of the lift. And, so the big challenges of life when you have big dreams. But I learned resilience and focus and came with a strategy of amalgamating and consolidating all our income producing assets. At the time, there were about 3.6 billion in my business, and I decided to list them. And that was the birth of the process, which was family names. At the time when I listed the company, it was the largest IPO listing on the JSE in the property sector. It happened to be black. It happened to be a black company, and it happened to be the first black, which was not necessarily the plan. And I kept my group, which is Billion Group, which again, intently so as Billion Group from the start, but it continued as a developer of assets. And of all these malls that we are developing, we owned all the land around them, where we develop affordable apartments and so on. I then carried on with Billion Group to develop other big regional shopping malls, Bay West, Beating Apps, which are named after my grandfather in Mthatha, Forest Hill, a couple of other many malls, others we bought and upgraded them. I had the liking for regional malls. And then I ran the listed fund itself as well. At the same time, I grew it from the 3.6 billion to about 22 billion in the space of 6 years. So that's my story. We currently busy developing about 55,000 apartments across the country, across 6 different cities. We had in our lives in that 6 years I spoke about, 6, 7 years, went to the UK. We developed some regional malls in the UK and bought some and upgraded them. I did some buildings out in East European countries. Did big building for Rabobank headquarters in Bucharest, which I completed 2009. There's a couple of things that out of passion sometimes I did, homes in Miami. So we're quite busy, but all developing and selling. Back of that, just out of passion. Residential has always been a passion of mine, especially more high-end homes. In all of this, one thing I want to say is always aspire to make a difference. Never settle for just living. We have had in the last 15 to 20 years, a lot of outreach programs every year for poor families, whether it's Christmas or winter blankets that we distribute and school shoes for kids and books, or groceries for poor families, whether it's Christmas or in bad times. At bursaries for lots of students, taken about 22 students between the two companies every year to university. We build schools every 3 years. We build a new school. And we stuck to our program. We deliver 14 classrooms in the rural areas together, school halls and so on. We build churches, I'm quite a staunch Christian. But above all, I want to say, always keep God first. For anything else, it keeps you humble. The chances you take today and onwards, the dream and the goals that you set, the hard work and discipline you'll apply will define your destiny. I thank you and I wish you all the best for your careers. Thank you.
There's videos of the leaders of the family.
Hello, good evening again. Good evening again. Thank you once again, Dr. Sisa, for that inspirational speech. It takes me back to one of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela's quotes. And he basically says, "Do not judge me by my successes. Judge me by how many times I fell and got back up again." So once again, thank you. So unfortunately, we won't have any Q&A for Dr. Sisa. However, you can go to our website, YIPA's website, www.yipa.co.za. We are going to have a tab up there where we will have questions that we'll be able to amalgamate from our members. And as Dr. Sisa is our patron, whenever he has time in his busy schedule, we will see see that those questions are answered for you guys. So yeah, unfortunately, right now we won't be taking any questions. Also, time is not our friend. Also, another thing in terms of social media, I know you all are on the Twitter, the TikTok, whichever one it is. Please do use the hashtag GPF20 anniversary for any tweets, any photos, anything that you'll be uploading on the socials. So next, I'll be moving on to our next speaker, who will be Dr. Sitsabo Dlamini, from the University of Witwatersrand, and he'll be giving us a lecture on creating sustainable built infrastructure in the South African context. Thank you, Dr. Dlamini.
Good evening, everyone. When such a powerful speech has been made, we just don't know where to start. So, but thank you very much, Doc, for your powerful testimony. Such testimonies, they build all of us. Because sometimes when people see you up there, they just think it just happened overnight. But when we share such testimonies, one comes to realize that whilst there may be heartbreaking challenges in life, it just depends in terms of your perspective. In every heartbreaking challenge, there's an opportunity. Yeah, so thank you very much. We really appreciate what you've shared with us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, CEO, the executive of GPF, the YIPA executive, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity. It's really important to sometimes engage on some of these issues. As I was just contemplating in terms of how I was going to approach this. A number of considerations came to mind. You know, as lecturers, we like to use these PowerPoint presentations. So I considered that, but some words of wisdom I got from one of my professors as I was doing my PhD in the UK, came, who used to discourage us from using PowerPoint presentation, that actually PowerPoint makes everything that you say pointless and powerless and pointless. That's why it's called PowerPoint. So I just decided that, no, maybe let me try a different approach. So I won't be long, ladies and gentlemen. I've only got 10 minutes to say what I've got to say in as far as creating a sustainable built infrastructure. Over the period of 31 years that I have been in the built environment space, I've learned a thing or two about building infrastructure, such as bridges and even malls. So as we pick up the pieces from the pandemic, after what our sector suffered as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm more ambitious. I have a more ambitious bridge in mind, especially for young people, that young people in the property sector can emulate. You will all know that I think Dr. Sisa made reference to how they struggled in the Eastern Cape, just dealing with the earthworks, where something massive had to be built. For everything that is massive that needs to be built, there must be a foundation. Now, the foundation for the bridge that I envisage is a strong belief in the value of education and research. The span of the bridge is the ability of the education system, on the one hand, to produce tomorrow's leaders, and on the other hand, to offer an education that is relevant to the industry that it serves, in your case, the property sector. Now, for every bridge that is built, normally we build bridges for traffic. So there has to be traffic that will go over that bridge. Now, the traffic across this bridge, which is to the future of most of our young people in this institution, is the people who succeed in their chosen field and reach their potential in industry, and those who remain in academia to teach future industry professionals and leaders, those who undertake research to help solve sustainability problems of infrastructure and produce new building materials and products that take the property sector forward. I strongly believe that as young people, there is need to understand the real world of creating sustainable infrastructure, a sector that presents many challenges and rewards. I think I can't re-emphasize what Dr. Sisa has already shared with us in terms of the kind of challenges and the kind of rewards that can emanate if you really persist in your endeavors to achieve whatever it is that you've set as your life goals. So education can be, education can change your life and your perspective of the world. The future is in your hands, and you will get out of life what you put into it, and you can make a difference. Your background, sometimes we put our backgrounds as excuses, but big things, experience have shown that they start from very humble beginnings. So your background does not matter. Success is not final, and failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Go out and live your dreams and always be optimistic. Pessimists see every opportunity. Pessimists see difficulty in every opportunity. Whereas optimists, in every difficult situation, they see an opportunity. The creation of sustainable infrastructure became all the more important in the era of COVID-19 and will continue as such beyond the pandemic period. The creation of sustainable built infrastructure must be based on social and economic inclusion, equity, and environmental justice. As we ponder and explore the question of creating sustainable built infrastructure, the pandemic has taught us that economic recovery efforts will now, more than ever before, need to be in sync with broad sustainability consideration and climate change initiatives. We need a quantum leap towards a global coalition for net zero greenhouse gas emissions, integrating carbon neutrality goals into economic and fiscal policies, and implementing measures to transition towards creating green jobs. As we contemplate how to empower the youth to crack the property space, we must take stock of the kind of policy interventions necessary for financing sustainable property developments going forward. Let us not examine the present nor the future, but let us disembarrass ourselves of short views and take wings into the future. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lamini. Sustainability, ESG, go green. That is the biggest, I'll call it chat, as you all speak to it, in the property industry right now. So if you're looking for innovative ways to enter the market, I would say go in that direction. Everyone is speaking about that right now and remain relevant. So next we're gonna have our CEO of YIPA, who is Lwandle. If you can stand up. Martina. And he will be speaking to the opportunities and the initiatives that we basically run at YIPA. Over to you, Lwandle. Thank you.
Thanks. Sheesh. Evening all. Evening all. Thank you so much to the GPF. Thanks to the YIPA team for hosting this, and thanks to our patron for being a part of this. I guess my task wasn't the hardest of all. I guess tasked to provide insights to the initiatives and programs that we look at YIPA. But I guess one always wants to take a step back and just give context as to why YIPA is and why YIPA is there, right? And I guess, I mean, we've been driven by sort of like our vision, and whenever I like to think about our vision, it's one that is sort of like an infinite game. And why I say infinite game is because we find ourselves in an environment and sort of like an economy which is ever evolving, which requires day-to-day thinking that's ever changing. And so whenever we think about our members and youth and how we want them to engage in this space, we always say we want to enhance or rather enlighten, empower, and encourage youth to actively participate in the property industry and the broader South African landscape. And we guided by our core pillars in how we focus on that, being education, empowerment, and entrepreneurship. And I guess, I mean, being that it was Youth Month last month, we always reflect on how far this organization has come and sort of like what we've been able to achieve in the last 12 to 18 months. And we're quite happy, backed by our key sponsor in Liberty 2 Degrees to bring sort of like impactful and mindful sort of like opportunities to our members and our prospective members. And reflecting further to the last 12 to 18 months, I mean, we've been able to partner up with the likes of CISA to also engage with our members on a day-to-day. And as Priscilla highlighted, also have that platform on our side to ensure that any questions you guys may have, that he can provide insights and share guidance on that platform. Further to that, I mean, literally yesterday, alongside our other co-partner in the property sector, Charter Council, we hosted a virtual careers day event just to highlight so like the opportunities we see in the property space and how young people can get involved. Because I guess the biggest challenge we always see is that, I mean, one can get a degree, one can get all the education backing they can get, but never know what is the next step and how to actually enter into the space. I always also reflect on my own journey. I mean, I think I was sitting in a lecture hall theater like this in a varsity in the Western Cape. And yeah, we had a similar chat. And years later, I found myself in investment banking, leverage finance transactor for leading investment banking team in RMB in the space. So we want to see more of those stories come through. And that's why YIPA. Thank you so much. And that's why we have this vehicle called YIPA and this sort of like engagements for our members. But then we're closer looking to sort of like the initiatives and programs we're looking at. I mean, we recently opened up a UCT pillar such that we on the ground and looking at our students and understanding the requirements and sort of like where we can help with them. And obviously Wits being a key next work in progress for us. So hopefully by next year we'll have a Wits. Thank you. By next year we'll have a Wits pillar such that we can actively engage with you guys, understand where the challenges are, understand where we can actively play a bigger role in ensuring that we see more stories like this, similar to the one we were shared by from CISA. And yeah, I guess, I mean, outside of that, I mean, we host an annual sort of like job shadowing program, because I guess one always says they're ready for the working space, but never really know what is out there and what we're actually doing there. So we always want to ensure that people see it firsthand as they're starting, know how they can get involved in the space. And sometimes property is not the answer. Sometimes it's just through networks and you want to start your own thing. We also want to make sure we're creating a platform for people to actively network and share those insights. So yeah, so that's what YIPA is about. And we're going to engage, obviously, it's going to be a panel discussion. I think these are sort of platforms we always want to encourage people. Let's ask the right questions. Let's challenge each other. And we never know what could come out of it. I think what drives me and my team is to ensure that, I mean, if we can end this event and there's one person who sees this venture or the property industry differently, we'll be serving our purpose. I thank you.
Thank you for that, Lwandle. So part of the reason why we did start YIPA is because I studied property studies, and a lot of my colleagues who were in the class with me, we didn't have these opportunities, we didn't have these talks, we didn't have people like Dr. CISA come speak to us. So which is why we created it in 2016, in order to allow you guys to engage with people in the sector to be able to get these opportunities. So please, as Dr. Lamini said, take these opportunities with both your hands and run with it, because it's not every day that you get to sit right next to such trailblazers in the industry. So next up, my program is running quite slow, but next we'll be speaking to the GPF opportunities and what it has to offer. So we'll have Dr. Shiraz Lagat, who is the, is the Dr. Mr. My apologies, who will speak to the opportunities. I've promoted you.
Yeah, thank you, see. Good evening, everyone. Just put a record straight, not a doctor. And yeah, so they say never follow a child's act and never follow something that I just said before. So I'm going to bring you guys down, right down to reality. Sorry, guys. So I have a pointless and powerless presentation. But technology is such, we decided we're not going to flight it. I'm going to talk to it, so it'll still seem like I'm talking to you, as opposed to, no, okay. not my night, okay. All right, guys, good evening, honorable guests, all protocols observed. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to talk to you about the Gauteng Partnership Fund. I'll see you on board. The GPF was founded in 2002. Our executive authority is the Gauteng Department of Human Settlements. So we're an agency of government. In terms of what we want to do, we want to support the National Development Plan. We also want to ensure that we promote entry into affordable rental space by new entrants. Our mandate is to attract public and private sector funding into low income housing. We share risk with co-funders, and we also serve as implementing agents for human settlements on the mega projects, rapid land release, and also on the informal upgrading of informal settlements program. These are the three products or programs that we have: rental housing fund, student accommodation fund, and the bottom one, the entrepreneur empowerment property fund. And I'm going to concentrate more on the last one, just to say that the rental housing fund is for established contractors. So you have to have experience there in order to access funding from that particular fund. Student accommodation fund, you certainly don't want to be paying your school fees there. So it's also for experienced developers. Seppo? And then the Entrepreneur Empowerment Property Fund. That is something that I'd like to talk to you about. It was a program that we designed, and as a government, as an agency of government, we wanted to ensure that there's transformation in the sector, and therefore we designed it as 100% HDI owned company. So in order to get funding from this particular fund, you have to be, your shareholding in this company has to be 100% HDI in terms of the company. So this program was established in 2010, and back then what we did was we used to put out what was a request for proposals at the time. We gave you a month to put your submission together. You then submitted. We did the evaluation of the proposal, selected some companies, and then we proceeded on to do the EEPF. That was when we initially started the program. Currently, the program is you just walk in. If you have a business plan, you submit your business plan. So it has changed from the request for proposal. As GPF, we are funding institutions. So how we want to assist new entrants is by providing easy, or not easy, but providing access to funding for new entrants. One of the ways we do that is the model that the GPF operates on across all the three programs is that we provide mezzanine finance. So generally you would have equity, you'd have mezzanine finance, GPF junior finance, and then you have the senior finance. This thing is jumping too quickly. And so with the EEPF, we will provide up to 40% of the funding as MES funding, and we will then provide you with a 20-year loan term. The loan pricing is also very concessionary, as opposed to prime rate. We price on JIPA, and those are the numbers you have there. This slide is important because it shows you our commitment to the Empowerment Property Fund. If you see across there, the equity rates or the equity percentages, it starts from 5 to 10% for your rental fund. Student accommodation, there's no negotiating. It's a minimum of 10%. But on the EEPF, it's only 3%. And I mean, equity is a constraint in terms of startup businesses. If you don't have the equity, nobody's going to talk to you. And again, the GPF, we do 30% across all of them, except into the EEPF, and there we can do up to 40%. So what that does is it creates a layer of, or it creates a funding, the equity plus the GPF is, in this instance, was 43%. Then we approach a senior funder and say, come in with the GPF, because the GPF is taking a first risk layer. You're only going to fund a project up to 57, 60% of the project, but you get a first mortgage loan, you get 100% cover. So all the time, as a senior funder, your security is covered. It's a mitigated risk with partnering with the GPF. The benefits of the EEPF program is it's targeted at first-time 100% HDI developers. As showed there, we offer preferential rates, and more so, we give you a 2 million rand interest-free loan. So that helps in terms of your cash flow, in terms of the structure, the weighted average cost of funding for your project. And we also provide a more hands-on approach to the EEPF program. The rental and the student accommodation, as we said, it's for experience and not first-time developers. So we expect, we expect that you deliver as in terms of the business plan as we want and everything else. So to date, we have 45 active participants. The breakdown is there: 26 males, 19 females, and 14 youth. Our aim is to get more of the youth and females into our program. This is important. The vigor of youth should stand you good when you put together your business plan. We will provide you with the guidelines, but the research, the legwork has to be done by yourself. You have to know your business. You can't get up one day and say, I want to be in property. You have to go out and identify and say, this is what I would want to do, where I want it, location, like commercial property, location, they say location, location, location. So you need to do the legwork. You need to make sure that you write up your business plan, that you partner with the right professionals and understand your limitations. We've asked you for a minimum of 3% equity. If you have R1 million, then you can't do 100 million rand project. You have to look at your equity, you have to look at your experience, you have to look at your partnerships and say, I'm going to start small, I'm going to tackle a small project, successfully deliver that project, and move on from there. We've had a classic example in terms of the step-by-step process to get where you actually want to be. So we will provide you with the business plan guidelines, but we expect as a minimum that you provide us with a comprehensive business plan. These are the contact details for the ladies that deal with the EEPF, and they Palisa and Fetsile. So please take their numbers down, take the emails down, contact them. we'd be very happy to accept applications from you guys. Thank you very much.
Minimize this. Minimize. Go to the seat. It's already. See that right? Let's play the short ones. Play the short ones. Because that one is I'll take it out. Yeah, I'm going to short. Yeah. This one is it. Where is it? It's still open. Red drums. It was coming. So I'm moving. Change the photo. Change the photo. It's here. No, it's here. No, it's fine. Do you know who's in charge of the, like,
Good evening again. Apologies, technical difficulties. Or not.
Moffat Investments would like to take this opportunity and congratulate its esteemed client, Chilling Holdings, for winning the Presidential Black Industrialist Award at the recent Black Industrialist Conference at the Central Convention Center in Johannesburg, South Africa.
My name is Tepo Lechau. I'm the CEO of Chilling Holdings, co-founder of Chilling Holdings with my partner, Elaine Pasha. I'm 32, she's 31. We've been in this business, in this property industry since 2012. The project value is about 52 million and it has 36 units. 30 units is 8 bedrooms, then 6 units is 4 bedrooms. In total, we house 264 students. The service Mr. Matamela rendered to us was he was the head architect on this project. And in fact, when we first met, I had a different design, but he told me that, no, you know what, I've got a better design for you guys that is going to make you as well as maximize your profit. My relationship with Mr. Kenya has really impacted us a lot. When I refer to us, it's me and my business partner, Elaine, in terms of he's our mentor now. And as well as he taught us something very important in business, that you must always keep on equipping yourself with knowledge. And as when he started, he just recently, I think it's a year back, he got his MPL, which is like a motivation, like no matter how long it takes you, you should keep on striving to get better. Because I think it took him, I forgot the years, but he never gave up. He's that type of person who never gives up. And he also tells you always that never stop learning, even about the business, even though you're a property developer, you can still equip yourself with more knowledge.
Moffat Investment has contributed to over 1 billion worth of property opportunities through the empowerment of over 20 Black entrepreneurs.
If we can solve the training and development, particularly in the entrepreneurship space, we would have solved a future catastrophe of dependency on government tenders or government programs.
With Muma, I think it goes beyond the reason our relationship is unique. It goes beyond just being an architect. Because with Mr. Kenny and Muma as a group, we discuss about investments, how to diversify your portfolio. So it's beyond that, they're just designing and he leads the project. No, it's an ongoing, we still interact regarding business, regarding mentorship, regarding investments, regarding learning opportunities to improve ourselves so we can be better in the property industry.
We are a company of passion, so we believe in harnessing that in a person. So once a person is well empowered, grounded in himself, he can do anything, literally, he can do more.
This is the biggest accomplishment that we've ever achieved in our business journey. Like in life, no matter how many challenges you face, you must always keep on going. Eventually you'll get it right at the end.
So I'm very cognizant. Yes. So I'm very cognizant of time. So I will cut the questions a bit short, but I hope we do get a discussion from our dear esteemed panelists. We have Dandy on this side as well as Tepo, mentor and mentee, as you heard on the video. So the first question I'd just like to ask is, why did you guys get into property development and management? We can start with you, Dandy.
Wow, you really didn't want to waste time, right?
Nope.
Yeah, perhaps for me, I evolved into it. It's not something that I said I want to go into property. Fortunately, actually, I studied here at Wits. I used to be the guy who would sit right at the back there and fall asleep when the lecturers are speaking. So it really something that is already within our built environment, I suppose.
And yourself, Sipho?
Thank you. With us, it was also a different journey. Me and Aileen, we both studied accounting, but she was an SRC member and I was in the Black Management Forum. So we were residing in off-campus accommodation. And that's where we saw an opportunity to enter this space because the property sector back then was very bad. And especially when it comes to student accommodation. So that's how we started and sparked our interest. So in the year 2012, we decided to get a mentor. So we got a lady already who was in the business, Mambusi. So she mentored us for the year 2012, and it's the same year that we registered our company. So even after, because my postgrad, I did finance, but I ventured into the property sector. So ever since I graduated, I've been in the student accommodation.
Oh, that's great, great. So I know that both of you have been in the industry for about 10 years or so. I just wanted to find out why exactly you guys went to GPF to get funding. How did that whole journey start? What was your starting point and how did you get to where you are right now?
Okay, for us, since 2012, then we began operating in the year 2013. So for 2013, we were accredited to accommodate 64 students, but we didn't have the funding or any capital. So we started off leasing with 2 apartments. Then we grew because we were leasing apartments, then subleasing to students. Then we, in the year 2015, that's when we did our business analysis that no, in order for us to grow, we need to own our own building. That's when we started doing our research for finding opportunities. Then we found GPF Fund such development. Then we approached GPF in the year 2016. Yeah, thank you. Perhaps mine, in fact, I should mention this because I met GPF not as an entrepreneur. I was the CEO of a company called City Housing, which they used to fund. In fact, something that has never been said, and I should mention this, is that in all honesty, I'm a product of the Gauteng Partnership Fund. In all honesty. My first development was in 2007. It was funded by business partners. We made lots of money between 2006 to 2007, got a job as the CEO of City Housing. The people who were paying for my salary at City Housing was GPF through their capacitation program. There are very few people who can still tell this story, except Shiraz was there. And I think if you can help me just appreciate them, please. So when they started with the Entrepreneurship Employment Fund, I was this young CEO of a social housing company, and you know what, you would need to be really an idiot not to see those opportunities. I'm like, do I still want to be the CEO or do I want to jump into the employment fund? And guess what? I jumped. Thank you.
So that's a great journey. Thank you. I don't know if you can hear me now. So just in terms of where you are right now, what are the biggest lessons, even if it's one lesson that you have learned along the way that you can pass on to the rest of us? So we can maybe follow in your footsteps, maybe take another road, but one big lesson that you have learned on your journey.
The biggest lesson that I would say we learned is in the property sector, one thing like many people must know that success doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, it's a journey, so you must be resilient, flexible, and as well as be patient. So that's one of the biggest lessons, because even through our journey as a property developer, that's what we learned. And I'd say that's one of the biggest lessons that we've learned. Personally, what I've learned maybe starts today. If I have to be honest, I've never been so inspired. Personally, Dr. Caesar, the many Godzillas that you've fought along the way, now it's making sense why it's so easier for us to do business. It's because you fought some of those many Godzillas. If you ask me until today, that is the greatest lesson. There are many other people who have fought many battles that we don't know about,
and it has become a lot more easier for some of us. And I think just also the notion that I used to think, and it's really challenging. This thing is boiling. I don't know how you guys are dealing with this thing. I was really inspired. But this is the one thing I would like to say, and I've often said in most of the, it has really become part of my philosophy to say that think big. Sometimes it doesn't work, so think bigger. Thank you.
So we are all still recovering. We're still in the midst of COVID. And I just wanted to find out what were the biggest challenges that you guys faced during COVID? I mean, you're in the student accommodation sector, so you know there was a shortage of students coming back in. Also, we also understand the shortage of accommodation in general in South Africa. It is a big problem. We talk about it every single year. So what are the things that that COVID both taught you, as well as, you know, with the looming, I want to say, global recession that is coming along? What are the things that you are putting forward to help you succeed through those difficult times?
Okay, thank you. Okay, for us, the pandemic affected us like any other business, but what we looked for was positives within the crisis, because many students were doing online learning. So we had to be flexible and innovative. That's why even today at our own property, we do provide free Wi-Fi for students to do online learning. So that's one of the things that we learned, and we can say like we looked for many positives and kept going. And one thing I can advise is that what helped us was that spending our income and our expenses wisely. Like we made proper decisions when it came to that, so that we can be able to go on and not close shop. Thank you.
COVID, ladies and gentlemen, if there's one thing that it really has taught me is that there is nothing that would ever prepare a man for a war than war itself. COVID was war. And if you're a businessman who survived COVID, or if you know a businessman who survived COVID, right now give them a thundering applause. Fortunately for us, and I must admit, we managed to make a spin-off from what we used to do, which was affordable rental housing, to student accommodation. Getting accreditation helped us a great deal. Many of the people who are particularly blue chip companies who really had it bad, and I would say, it was mainly because they enjoyed the upside of not necessarily depending on, say, your NSFAS and accreditation and all of that. So when they COVID hit, they were ready, the students were ready to go home. Now imagine, without any guarantees from NSFAS and all of that, all the nice, beautiful buildings were empty. So we were very fortunate in that we were an accredited student accommodation provider. And we had done a lot of work, if I must say, at risk as a professional. And now I'm appealing to all my professional team members, the architects, the engineers, and all of that. We did a lot of work at risk, so much so that during COVID, we were the busiest, both in terms of professional work that we've built over the last 3 years. For instance, they only started going to site in 2019 during COVID. That was the one part. But also in terms of just the asset base, we perhaps grew the biggest during this tenure of COVID. Thank you.
I would like for us to continue to speak, to continue to chat, but we will have an opportunity to network afterwards. However, time is not on our side. So my last question to you is maybe one book or one movie that really changed your career, changed the path of your career, and that inspired you on the journey that you're on right now.
Can I mention two? The Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason. Go buy it. Richest Man in Babylon by George S. Clason, written in 1926. Small, beautiful, and powerful. The second one is The Greatest Salesman by O.G. Madino. Thank you.
With me, it's going to be a different answer. I think Mr. Tendi also testified to this. We believe in prayer, number one. Like we faced many challenges throughout this project. There was a time when we thought it was not going to happen. We faced many stumbling blocks, but I would say prayer, and we believe more in learning with like practical and life challenges and so forth. So yeah, thank you. So I would say prayer.
Thank you for that. Thank you both. As I said, we will have time afterwards for everybody to chat today. If you would like to get more information about their companies and about themselves, about their journey. But right now, we will be having the vote of thanks. Let me stand up. If I can ask Leah, the Chief Information and Development Officer of the GPF, to give us a vote of thanks for the evening. Oh, here she is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I've been tasked with a very simple task of just thanking everybody for being here. And I think one of the things that interested me when I walked in here was seeing so many young faces. This is very important for our GOD targets. We are looking for young people. We're looking for women, for girls that would want to participate in the property sector. So we're hoping after this session, we're going to see applications that comes from yourselves. You've got our contact details. We're more than happy to talk you through the process of applying for our services. Just in terms of thanks, we'd like to say thank you to Dr. Sisa. One of the things that my CEO said to me was, please make sure that you grab him. We need to work with him on our capital raising initiative. So we're looking forward to working with you very closely. Dr. Dlamini as well, thank you very much for your lecture. We appreciate this. We've got lots of programs that we are innovating or initiating as the GPF, including what we call Kasi for Real. This is one of those initiatives where we're trying to change the landscape in our township and get people to participate in the real estate. We'd always be interested to partner with your likes so that we take these programs forward and we can learn from yourselves and perhaps use some of the learnings from these initiatives to inform some of the academia going forward. We'd also want to say thank you to the Wits for opening the doors and allowing us to be here today. And to all the people that worked very hard, YIPA, our partners here, congratulations for winning the presidential. You guys are making us look good as the GPF, and these are the stories that we want. So thank you very much. We'd also want to say thanks to each and every one of you for being here tonight. As the GPF, we are always looking forward to partnering with all of you. So thank you and enjoy the rest of your evening.